think we're good. Maybe we
Right. We are officially underway.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's City of Tumwater Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, 7 o'clock, and our meeting is called to order. Go to roll call. Commissioner Edwards?
Here.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
Here.
Commissioner Staff, we're expecting, but not here yet. Vice Chair Spivey?
Here.
Mr. Burrell?
Here.
Mr. Burrell. Any changes to our agenda tonight?
No.
Somebody online? No. Brandon. Commissioner Staff, I'm calling the roll.
Thank you. I'm here.
Any commissioners report? Brad, managers report?
Let me see. A couple things. I'm working with the mayor and administrator about finding more candidates for planning commission. We've got 3 openings. So I will follow up with them again, probably tomorrow on what their status is. We are also out again for our senior planner position. We had a candidate who unfortunately her partner didn't want to move, and so we're out again.
Okay.
So anybody interested in becoming a senior planner, talk to Erica, and she can help you process.
But I'm glad you're right on it, trying to get something.
Yeah. And the other good news is we now have contracts for our transportation consultant, our climate consultant, and our economic development consultant. So
Okay.
ready with all that stuff.
The economic development consultant, that's not to replace the departing,
No.
Okay.
We have asked Jason Robinson, who's a local person we've used before. He's going to be helping us with the technical side of the update.
Okay.
When we did this in 2019, he created basically a giant workbook of all the data we needed, specifically for Tumwater and its businesses and so forth. So we've asked him to help us again with that effort. So, and we are also out for a replacement for Austin. I'm not sure exactly. It sounded like they were going to try to split the position. Half of it would deal with HCP, half of it would deal with some other more traditional economic development stuff. So it wasn't going to be everything. So don't know the status on that one.
All right, thanks for that. That's moving forward. Do we have anybody here from the public? Oh, great. It looks like we have a couple of people online, nobody here in the room, but online. If you will state your name and your address and any affiliation if you'd like to speak. I'll call on Ms. Towsley first. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. Go ahead.
How's this? Amy Towsley, a municipal manager with Puget Sound Energy. We're just listening in tonight. We want to be engaged in the city's update to the comprehensive plan. So just interested in your discussion on housing and, of course, as it pertains to energy and climate issues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to listen in. And it looks like we have also Mr. Tuano from Jolt. Mr. Tuano, if you'd like to address the Planning Commission, please go right ahead.
Hello, Jerome from the Jolt News. Don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for covering us. All right. Great. Let's go to our item number 7, our 2025 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update on housing. And we have a discussion item only tonight as a result of our nice joint housing tour. Brad, are you leading in, and then Erica, or is Erica?
We will both be.
Very good.
There are three big topics I think we wanted to cover that we didn't feel we needed to prepare additional materials for, because in part, we've probably generated enough paper already. The other thing is, we're really in the middle of some things, but I think it's probably timely for us to have a conversation about some of the things we're working on. So the three things are, I wanted to sort of close the loop on the housing tour. What we talked about, what you saw, what you think are next steps based on what you saw. The second item is to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing right now with the housing stakeholder group. For the materials that I sent to folks online and handed out today, I've included a list of all the housing stakeholders we've identified to date and we reached out to. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing and what we would like assistance with. And then the last item is we're in the middle of planning for a open house on the housing element and related code updates. It will be May 29th on a Wednesday. It will be in person in the evening, and then we'll have a 2-week online component that will start the same day. So we're going to try something different to try to capture as many different things as possible. So we're in the planning stages for that right now. So we wanted to sort of go over what we're doing to sort of bounce some ideas off everybody. So if we could start first with your thoughts on the housing tour, what you saw, what you thought was important, anything that you would like follow up on, et cetera. I'll throw it open to them.
Well, I want to first say that great job planning that the tour, all the different people, the logistics, and getting, I don't know how many members of the public there were that came. It was a goodly number. You know, note to self, let's do that again. That seemed to draw people along to go do something interesting like that. So great job organizing that. That was no small feat. Thank you.
Glad you had fun.
Yeah, we had 10 members of the public.
Yeah.
There were about 5 from the Realtors group, and then we also had some other interested people from across the spectrum, plus a member of the Jolt was there. So.
Throw it open to anybody else. Looks like Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
Yes, thank you. I'll add my thanks for the trip. It was interesting to see the different kinds of housing. I was sort of amazed how they were hidden away because I hadn't seen them before, and many of them look very attractive. What I didn't see was affordable housing. To what extent did you feel that anything that we looked at approached being affordable?
Yes. Just a quick, some of the discussions we've had so far with some of the stakeholders have been really about, well, number one, the housing market as it is right now is not affordable, period, unless it's subsidized or there's some very special conditions, whether you're renting or trying to own property. And that's pretty wide recognition of that's being an issue. What we're probably going to have to do a little digging into is, I don't want to say that looking into the informal housing market, but digging a little deeper than Zillow and seeing what other things are out there, room shares, whatever, because there has to be some level of middle ground. Not everybody can afford $2,000 a month in rent. They've got to, and one of the constant refrains that I found interesting in the meetings we've had so far with the stakeholders is, I joke, I have a 23-year-old at home that I'm trying to get to leave, and almost everyone in the room about my age has exactly the same situation, which scares the heck out of me, but it's not uncommon. So there are other things that are happening that probably aren't easily captured that we're trying to figure out. But yeah, Terry, I agree with you on the affordable side.
The apartments that are in the final stage there on Tyee Drive, Do we know what a one-bedroom will go for there?
Not yet. We will probably know fairly shortly because that development has applied for a multifamily tax exemption. And in order to do that, they'll have to report what they are going to be offering the affordable housing units, which is 80% of AMI for, and they'll have to break it down by bedroom size. So we'll have a pretty good idea of, once we see those figures, what that looks like.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And I just would also like to say again, thanks to staff and everyone who kind of put that together. It was really fun and I think really informative. And I would echo the comments too about how amazing it was to kind of see what was there. You know, I have lived in this area my entire life, and like driving down North Street, I had no idea that there were, you know, these kind of hidden away places that had all these really intriguing kind of multi-housing and units and things like that in them. Like you just wouldn't really think about that or notice it unless it was pointed out. So I just really appreciated that opportunity. And I would just also add too that I really appreciated that opportunity to do it with the city council. I thought that that was really beneficial, and I thought the city council members were really amazing, and like I felt like they really tried to connect with us and have those conversations and kind of like ask us questions and really engage. And so I thought that it was just a really amazing opportunity for us to kind of continue to build that relationship and kind of get on the same page about some things.
Great. Commissioner Varela.
Again, very good tour. It was very helpful. One of the things I wanted to note was as we look at some of the improvements that we're going to see in Tumwater, so as we see the craft district being built out, more businesses coming into town, that will have an impact on the housing market, correct? Because it will be more desirable to live here, which is going to drive prices up. Has there been any way to study those potential impacts as we grow out, because it will make that market more competitive? And also, I can empathize greatly with you, Brad, because I have a 23-year-old at home that I am trying to get out of the house, and I don't think it's feasible for quite a while.
Well, maybe we should just offer to trade. We could set up a large trading, anyway.
Done and done.
Topic.
Rotational housing.
Maybe just buy one house, put all the 23-year-olds.
Yep, I'm open to suggestions. No, that's actually an interesting point, Anthony, about what if we get what we want development-wise, what kind of environment will that create for housing prices and so forth. One thing that I am waiting for is, we've got, I think I mentioned we had about 2,500 approved units in the pipeline that have been permitted but just haven't finished construction or even started construction. I'm not concerned. I just want to see what the effect of all those units coming out of the market will have, whether that can either, first of all, hold prices down or, would I do something to the market to be a little bit more beneficial. So I'm hopeful in both directions. We get more variety, get more people attracted. They're coming anyway. I'm hoping we have more housing will help that.
Yes, Commissioner Staff.
One of the things that stood out to me, especially when we're over in Olympia, were the size of the units. I think we're 1,700 square feet, around $500,000. Have we looked at smaller units, let's say 800 square foot houses? So we're looking at ADUs constantly for 800 to 1,000 square feet, but what about primary units like those cottage style housing, more around 800 square feet? Also having the city plan, I think it's 6 ADUs right now, but what if those were permanent dwelling units, affordable, easy to get permitting for, and also to break ground on? From what I saw while we were out there, we do have a lot of options, but streamlining that process might make it more attainable, one, to drive the cost down and bring more groups in to actually develop these sort of projects.
So a little bit of background on some of our discussions so far, and I guess we'll just put all the topics together because they fit together. Out of the groups I've listed it, I sent the list out. We have talked with the master builders, the chamber, the Thurston Chamber, the Thurston Realtors, and a couple others. The main message from the development community is size doesn't matter as much as we would like it to, meaning that it's not significantly cheaper to build an ADU than a 1,700 or even a 2,000 square foot building. Just because of, when you're building the kitchen unit and the bath unit and the fundamentals of the building, you can add additional square footage onto it, but it's not a cost savings to necessarily always build small. And that's been a struggle for them because one of the people that we talked to was part of the chamber discussion is a local architect that we worked with on developing sets of plans for our ADUs. So somebody could come to the counter, get a pre-approved set of plans for the ADUs and build something. When she's been trying to build affordable and try to do it stick built on a smaller scale, it just hasn't penciled. It hasn't worked. But we have heard some interesting things about, well, what can we do to move beyond stick built to, look for more prefabricated things that, one of the thoughts was it makes no sense probably from a labor standpoint to do a stick-built ADU in somebody's backyard because of the cost of, the person walking back and forth with all the materials, et cetera, et cetera. If you could crane it a whole unit in or a significant part of a unit in and set it on a foundation, that, that's the first level. That's the first level of being able to save some costs. So exploring potential options like that, I think, are one way of looking at, potential solutions to some.
Do we have any providers of those prefab? Because I've seen the wall units where they'll prefab the wall, insulate the whole thing, get great energy efficient. Do we have those groups talking with the city, or?
That has been the difficult part to identify, folks who are doing that kind of work, and locally. I mean, driving up and down 5, I know there's folks that are doing the prefab housing, so there's somebody in the area that's doing that, but I'm not aware of somebody who's doing it locally, or has tried to use it on a larger scale. Or I've I haven't heard any conversations with the building folks about those kinds of things either. So I think we might have to do a bit of encouragement and, selling and saying, hey, there's a market here. People want to do this. People are telling us they want to do this. And the realtors had a slightly different spin on it. They thought it was more possible financially, but again, the hurdles were also kind of similar to what the builders were saying. But they had a little bit more positive spin on the ability of building and having more ADUs come up. So I'm hoping it's slightly better that way.
It's just fine. I didn't think.
Well, unfortunately, I was not at the housing tour
That's right.
itself. I was out of town for it, but from the sound of it, though, it does sound like, it's one thing to discuss this all on paper, be able to say if we change the zoning regulations, if we allow for these things, that's showing progress. But unless we have like actual, foundations built into the ground, it's a bit harder. I do wonder, Brad, you mentioned the feedback from builders about needing those sort of like fixed aspects, the kitchen, the bathroom, what was the other one you mentioned? You mentioned the third thing.
Like the HVAC system, the things that are.
The bones that you really need in any sort of structure. So is there a way, or is there a type of like ADU or similar sort of building where you could have like 2 of them sort of subdivided onto, say, if you took a 1 acre lot, subdivided that into 2 half-acre lots and could fit like 2 ADUs on the same half acre? Is that I don't know for design aspects, but as far as if the concern is that they're going to make more money by building out more square footage rather than just doing a smaller ADU. Is it possible to have like 2 for the price in the same space so that you would get 1 larger house? And what are the regulations around that?
Yeah, so the state has passed some development regulations that we'll have to bring into our code dealing with a number of ADUs that we can allow on a single lot. So, right now, we do one ADU in almost all of our zone districts that allow residential use. State law says we have to allow two. So, and that can be done without having to go through a subdivision process.
Oh, okay.
So you could have almost essentially have 3 units on one single family lot. There's also some provisions, I believe, that for increasing the number of units on a single lot, so you can potentially go up to 4 on a single family lot. That would be, again, allowed without needing to subdivide or anything like that. One of the things that the realtors mentioned was that there was some legislation in front of the state about lot splitting, which would make basically the redevelopment and within the city a little bit easier, because you would have lesser requirements for taking your existing lot, creating a additional lot under a different ownership and all that without having to go through the full subdivision process, which is, there's a lot of requirements that are included in the subdivision process. So that didn't pass, but the realtors are probably going to be pushing hard again next year to see if they can get something along the lines for that done. But
Okay, so it's with the state at this point.
it's with the state at this point. The other thing I want to bring up is in the conversations, it's very clear that the interest rates are playing havoc right now with the builders and the ability to, do something. We've got some stuff in the pipeline, and we have some things that might be just hanging up because of the interest rates going forward. So, and I don't know if there's a solution to that, because to be really honest, the interest rates are returning to normal, quote unquote. But we're sort of in a weird situation where we've got a lot of people who, got much cheaper mortgages and have don't have no incentive whatsoever to move and pay higher rent, even if they want to downsize. They'll pay higher costs to downsize to a smaller unit because of the way the mortgage rates are now. So that was just another thing that we've heard.
I have a couple things that I noticed that I'd like to go ahead and mention. And one of them is, I think it was Councilmember Althauser that brought up when we were first standing at the first stop at the Grass Lake development, and that was something about the pace of growth far outstripping how quickly units can be built or, added. And he made some, I don't remember the precise, but, it took us, a century or so of the founding of Tumwater to now to get to how much housing we have now. And, we need to double that. And we need to double that in something like 20 years or maybe roughly. So, I think keeping that time component in mind, it's a challenge for sure, but, understanding we don't have to have it tomorrow at least, but over the next 2 decades, we're going to see, probably a lot of different things shifting and changing. And I think we just have to not, manage our expectations and that of the public and everybody else about, it's just not going to be an easy flip the switch kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that's really clear. One of the things that we've been hearing, and I mean, I've experienced myself, is coming out of the 2008 recession, we never really recovered.
Yeah.
In terms of the building, just to keep pace with growth, we were supposed to be doing 600 units a year, and we were lucky, and on a really good year, to hit 300. So we knew we were going to have a problem at some point, but that's just the way it was falling out for us. There were a lot of factors to that. There was one thing when we were talking with the builders, it was clear the recession really hurt or killed off the small developers because number one, all of their stock went away, all of their ability to do stuff went away because in order for them to build now for 2 years in the future, they've got to have something in progress. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have something to pay for the bills now, it's not going to happen. Yes. And that has been a real big issue with with the building side of things, even with low interest rates and all the other, things.
Yeah. It just takes time. And I guess so with that kind of context in mind about what we're aiming for, which is like huge challenge for the city of Tumwater and everybody else too. It would be, I think it might be helpful to always, kind of, getting on my soapbox about data, to kind of help match what we think the growth needs or the demographic needs might be over that time period that we're planning for. And I mean that in terms of, say, family size, age, of people moving to our area, other kinds of circumstances that we need to plan for and target those kinds of units that would be maybe most appealing to that market, if you will. And you don't get there until you kind of understand, what is that market? Whether, somebody's in to buy a home or to rent or whatever that thing is. So I'm going back to Commissioner Kirkpatrick's point, understanding, kind of those costs involved to an eventual homeowner or a home renter, is pretty key about, what is the likely set of population of people that we're expecting to be here, and what are their circumstances likely to be that they could at all afford. Some of the places at the Grass Lake or the one up there on Tumwater Hill, while they're out of reach for, I don't know where the line is, with the percents of AMI, but for some people, yes, it's still within reach. It's affordable to some people. It's just, these other people though that we are anticipating coming, what are their circumstances? So understanding what that is, I think, will be really key to us. And I don't know the data on that, but hopefully we could learn that and factor that in to our circumstances. So I'll shut up in a minute, but okay. So the last thing I kind of really noticed about some of the, not all, but some of the places that we visited was how car dependent everything is. And I think it would help overall as part of the, kind of part of where we're trying to aim is, to always really focus on, so what are the services here? What would people be doing? Would they, where's their job? Where's their school? Where's their medical care? Where's their grocery store? Where's the, whatever the heck it is, for their livability? And try to understand that holistic look and not just the housing itself. What's all around there. And I think that would help connect the parts of the comp plan too that we're after, not just housing, but all those other things that play into the overall affordability of something. So it's not just the house, it's not just the apartment unit or the duplex or what have you. It's, what have I got to expend to live here if I've got to have a car and maintain that car and insure that car and fuel that car and, maybe another car but for my 23-year-old or whatever, the circumstances are. So understanding, that the data again about what are those costs that contribute to the affordability of something. Okay, I'll see if anybody else wants to talk. Yes, Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
I'll throw one out that maybe we can chew on a little bit. And part of my background of growing up as a child and later on in a profession of what the military calls family housing. And family housing is housing which is provided, it's owned by, in this case, the government, and the people that rent it pay utilities. And the people who rent it have to have a certain profession or they're kicked out of the house. I mean, that's what's made available. And I read an article recently in Connecticut where they're building a village. Society of Friends acquired the land and is paying to build multifamily housing on that land. And the rent that will be charged, there will be no rent charged to the people who live there. They'll pay utilities on the property. and they have to be either preschool teachers or childcare workers in order to live in that housing, because that's the groups which they are unable to afford to house near their school system. So they done a pointed direction of going to family housing, finding a way to do it. And I'm wondering whether there are any legal barriers to doing something like that in the state of Washington.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I remember last year I went to Philadelphia, New Jersey for a planning conference, and I'm a housing geek at that time. And so I ended up in the wilds of New Jersey looking at affordable housing. And their models, they have a lot more flexibility in terms of what they can do. They had some really incredible concepts. But I was worried that I just don't think the Washington framework allows for a lot of that stuff. But I also need to do some more research on that kind of stuff and to see what we can and can't do that way. If there are organizations, I guess, that could help on the nonprofit side pay for that, or if the state takes a much larger role than it has in the past in terms of providing funding for it, I think it might be a possibility. But even with like the housing trust fund and other things that are now countywide, that's not going to produce a lot of units, unfortunately. It's just not there yet. So I like the idea. I just don't know if number one, we can do it necessarily here.
Well, it seems to me that it's a non-number, but if we could solve the homelessness problem and spend some of the money that we're spending now to build housing for the homeless, to build housing of the type that we're talking about here, instead, that would be a source of funds. I mean, there's millions of dollars being spent on buying motels and hotels and redesigning office buildings and all those things, because all of a sudden we have such a large population of homeless. It would seem like if we could beat that and figure out how to fix that, then we would have a source of funds to attack low-income housing.
Yeah, I know from our discussions at the Regional Housing Council and at the city level, we've been really trying to push hard for the creation of housing overall to sort of drive the ability for people not to be in homeless situations by having available housing. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the conversation between dealing with the immediate social and emotional, all the needs on the housing, on the homeless front, and then having the vision to realize that you've got to invest something now and expect a payoff in 2 years to deal with this larger problem. That's been our constant discussions that we've had. And I know from the discussions with the chamber, that was sort of their underlying purpose. Are we looking at even the broader picture of how we're dealing with homelessness in terms of providing housing, first of all, so people aren't in that situation, in addition to the emergency services if needed kind of thing. So, yeah.
That's a really intriguing idea that is out there, and it makes me wonder, I hope you do a little bit of research if you can, on particularly like how was that financed?
Yeah.
And that would mean is not just have we as a city got the authority to do something like that, but is there again kind of a financial market to help support it, or is it strictly nonprofit for a certain kind? Whatever the deal is, what's going on there?
Mm-hmm.
Is some foundation behind it, or is the federal, whatever they're called, federal housing department, were they involved? Some intel on that would be really interesting, or other other things like that.
Well, in my mind goes to, is it not just the utilities they pay, or is it just I mean, even $300 a month for, so, yeah, just a subsidized type of location for that.
And that was something we heard a lot of in communities in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, was there was a large subsidy, and it wasn't they had moved away from, everybody who gets a subsidy in one part of the town. It was now spread in multiple places because court battles and a few other things have occurred. But it was pretty aggressive in terms of, it wasn't incentivized, it was required. When you built a large development, you had a certain percentage of units that were permanently supported units as part of that development. And that was kind of like, ooh, we're not there yet. That's just not something we've tried to go to yet.
And I like what Commissioner Kirkpatrick brought up, is targeting the folks that we need in the town. What are those careers and what are those career paths? And yeah, this isn't going to happen immediately, but over the next 20, 30 years, how do we want to shape this? And this sounds like a really feasible option.
And I think that ties back into the guidance we have from the Commerce and the state about planning for the income groups, and then more importantly, tying those specific income groups to types of professions. So not necessarily saying that only this profession will be housed here, but this is sort of the range we're shooting. These are the kinds of things we want to, and just making it, much more real, I think, than just saying it's, a certain number and everybody below it, we want to do something.
And there may be circumstances here in our, within Tumwater, where it's not necessarily the work that one has, but, our circumstances might be that we are supporting more of a retirement community, people retiring out of the military, for example, who may or may not want to have a business or work in some capacity after they just want to retire here, or just, for whatever reasons, older people want to come here, something. There's a huge component of course, state and county and city employee type folks here. So our population, the demographics of our population might be somewhat different. But still the idea of targeting, well, so who's going to come? What do we need to do for those people? Provide for them. Yes, go ahead.
So I just thought of this conversely from, if somebody, is working from home, say, they build their office or their place of work out of their home. What about the opposite side of that, where, could you have areas that are allowable or built in that you could have like a commercial office property or business of some kind, restaurant, shop, something like that, that also has housing integrated into it, where like you have, housing available, say like downstairs is business, upstairs the home. Does that then become more feasible for, especially for like if you're, say, a younger family that, you're looking to start a business, but you can't afford to start a business and like rent an apartment or buy a house at the same time, so you could sort of have them integrated. Are there options like that in Tumwater? Or, because I've seen like places in Olympia that, kind of do the, first, what is it, 5-on-1, where, you've got the first floor is general commercial, and then above that you've got housing. What sort of options like that do we have in Tumwater, if any?
Well, we are actually starting to see that be built now. And some of the developments on the other side of the freeway are commercial on the first floor and then the residential above. We're not quite to the stage of, live, work in the same spot probably, unless you specifically work in that, whatever is on the first floor. And I know we've been also looking at ways to encourage that kind of thing as well, where it's feasible, where it makes sense. A small shop owner, a person who just doesn't need a huge amount of space, but they do need some level of commercial space to do what they need to do for crafts or whatever, for sale, for their business, whatever, but at the same time have an immediate living space, where it's not necessarily, commercial on the first floor, 5 stories of apartments and some other kinds of models. So, I made the mistake of starting to read a book about sort of how that works in Tokyo, where you have very small shop space, you have very small residential space, but they're really sort of developed together. And it's sort of like the micro neighborhoods, you know, you've got the busy congested streets, and then you go 2 blocks off and it's quiet, but it's also bustling because that's where everybody has a small shop and lives and everything else. But that kind of development is encouraged, and new developments are built along those lines. So I'm just curious on whether that's a feasible thing here or not.
Mr. Kirkpatrick?
Yes, the original design for the L&I building in Tumwater included a childcare facility. And unfortunately, the legislature cut that out at the last minute, along with the gym. Those were 2 of the facilities that were planned to be part of that facility. And, you know, it seems to me that incentives for those types of things to business that is building in Tumwater would accomplish 2 things. You know, one it would attract employees who are looking for childcare to go along with their work, and 2, it would make it more affordable. But I don't know if there isn't something in your book of rules that prohibits that.
You know, I don't think in the zoning side of things that we have any issues with that, because under state law, childcare facilities of multiple sizes are basically required to be allowed in almost all of our zones. Meaning that, you know, on the zoning side, I think it's a doable thing. I think the question is, you know, and L&I would have made perfect sense because of the size of the employee base to have something like that. You would have enough people there to make it worth. But I guess we would have to figure out some other things in order to have a big enough concentration of employees that it would make sense to have something similar to that. You know, in addition to childcare, any other services and so forth that would be supported by the employee base.
It just, I don't know, in that circumstance, when that building was built, that's Tumwater, right? And so did they have to abide by Tumwater development codes to build that building? So we could have required them to include that? Maybe we didn't think of that, but
I don't think we ever thought about a requirement that an employee over a certain size must.
maybe it's the kind of services connection we need to think about.
Yeah.
When we're allowing development, even of office and commercial, is what's nearby for the people who are coming here.
It might have been the airport.
Could have been.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Terry, if you could send me those examples you were talking about, I'd like to do a little research into them.
We're talking about the ones in Connecticut.
Yeah, I'd be curious to find
Yeah.
out a little bit more about it. And I'll do some digging into the places I looked at in New Jersey as well.
You know, those, of course, are being supported by a nonprofit, a Society of Friends.
Mhm.
The architecture of the buildings is being provided free by Yale University. It's a whole big package of things that are
Got it.
done. And of course, the advantage of getting a housing development with all the same kind of people in it is the same as the advantage you have in family housing on a military base. You've got family housing for teachers, and they tend to, when they live together, they tend to work together and benefit from it more than they would if they were just in their own isolated little apartment. Yes, I'll send it to you.
You brought up actually the university connection is actually a really interesting thing that we started to talk about with some of the stakeholders was how much have we been talking with South Puget Sound College and the other local colleges about their housing needs in the community, because I do know with student housing and other things, I think there's an opportunity that I don't think we're exploring enough of. We had a potential development, not quite a dormitory, but not quite an individual apartment building that they were proposing to build in Tumwater to support students at South Puget Sound.
Remember
That was a private developer. I'm just wondering if we need to look a little more closely. We need to talk with the college, number one, but I think also we need to probably think about other opportunities like that.
Well, to that point, the craft district, their brewing and distilling program, that is one of the big things that is amiss, is that they do not have the housing, because people want to go to the program. However, they cannot afford to come, they can afford the program, they just can't afford to come and try and find a place, or even find a place close enough to live in.
Beyond the South Puget Sound Community College, I'm wondering if UW's architecture, or they have I don't remember the real name of it, but they have something connected with their engineering school, which is something sustainability and engineering.
They have their urban planning school has been.
Maybe that's it too, but they've gone to some lengths to sort of connect the dots between some of those academic programs to real life outside. So might be worth exploring some with them. I don't have any leads.
You want me, I'm an alum, so I probably should talk to.
All right. Do you know anybody?
Another thing that just popped in my mind, sorry.
Go ahead.
HVAC systems, you brought up that is a very expensive portion. Is there anything written into the codes that it has to be a ducted system for certain types of housing, or are ductless allowed by stormwater code?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I also know that the energy code, the recently adopted energy code, there's a lot of unhappiness about potential costs for that and what that is doing to affordable housing on the side. So we're trying to unpack a lot of that, figure out what exactly, what's going on, what kind of flexibility we may have. But I could certainly talk with our building official about that.
Because when I travel and see affordable housing in other countries, right outside is that ductless system that can actually service the entire house.
Mr. Kirkpatrick.
We can't let that one go by, since I know we've got an audience listening to this, is the idea to ban gas in housing is absolutely ridiculous. We don't have the capability to build the electric power generating facilities or the distribution facilities to switch all those people from gas to electricity. We're requiring the individuals to pay the cost of doing that. That's something that somebody's got to get through their head and realize that clean gas is a transition source of energy, and we just can't legislate it out of being. I got that off my chest.
That's great. Another point of interconnectedness.
Well, it was definitely for the builders and Chamber of Commerce and the realtors, that was also a hot button issue for them as well.
I'll take that off the options available.
Just the gas ban part of it.
Yeah, okay, but their position was to leave it as an option.
Yeah, leave it as an option.
More options available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, until you can really make a transition, it's going to be difficult. I agree with that.
I thought I saw a hand up on the screen, but I don't want to cut off our discussion of the tour because I think it was really important. But if we're ready to move on, let me know. Last call for questions, points and remarks on the tour. All right. Brad, did you have more on the tour, or were you
No.
ready to move on to the stakeholder group?
Yeah, I want to touch a little bit on the stakeholders, and I apologize again for getting it out just at the meeting time. So I don't anticipate you're going to have enough time to go through this and have some thought. But what I would like to ask of you is to take a look at the groups that we've identified, and also try to think of who else are related groups and other things that you may be aware of in the community that we should be talking to about issues related to affordable housing. The way that we have been framing our discussions is that we're trying to do two things. One, obviously, we have the state requirements to do the comprehensive planning, the housing element, and everything related to that. But on a broader level, we also have the city council direction for us to look at issues of homelessness and affordable housing and regional ways of trying to address those things. And so we're trying to broaden our scope in terms of who we've been talking to, not just the folks who are going to be building it, but the service providers and so forth. So as an example, this past previous week, we talked with some folks at the local food bank. We're going to be going, we have a meeting with Homes First tomorrow, and we've got a Manufactured Home Park Tenants Association, the Renters Association, and a whole bunch of other groups that we, have conversations lined up with. What we don't have, I think, is we're not hitting the groups that I think are representing some of the ethnic groups within in the city. We're kind of struggling with getting responses and those kinds of things. So anything any ideas that you may have to help us with that, we've been trying, go through the social services and identify who they work with and as part of their mission, and then try to build relations through that. But we're always looking for additional opportunities for that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Scott.
Well, I know you said you just put this together. So I don't know if you want to like add to the rubric or have, more data that you need to track, but for now, it's just a list, alphabetical order of, who's who, but would you consider like adding a column for, say, like classifying what each organization is? So is it a nonprofit? Is it a locally based organization? Is it a chapter of like a, broader, like nationwide organization? If you sort of add some of those, I think that could really clarify, like, okay, we've got, plenty of nonprofits, but they're all based outside of, they're just local chapters based outside of us. We need more of like the local ones, or vice versa. We've got multiple home building organizations, the master builders, sorry, I'm blanking on the other, you've got Rob Rice Homes, but you also have groups like Only Indivisible and the Democratic Socialists of America and the Thurston County Chamber of Commerce. So it's all like this wide mix of stakeholders that I think are important, but it also could be useful to sort of classify to see like, okay, for every DSA that you have, do you have a master builder or a Chamber of Commerce to sort of make sure that like everyone's getting included?
So this is, then probably another way to explain this is, this isn't necessarily, this is the stakeholders we've identified that are going to be the only stakeholders. It was really sort of the list to start to build a list of stakeholders from, meaning that here are the people we are aware of in the community that are active in the city of Tumwater. That's another very important point for us, is trying to connect to Tumwater residents, Tumwater businesses, because again, the plan has to reflect the city, not just the region. And we're trying to use this as a springboard to identify more in the community that we just might be 2 or 3 layers down that we don't see, but, have dealings with others who in the social services or whatever, that we should be talking with.
Some of the groups that I'm not, go ahead, Commissioner Barilla.
Just quickly, do you know if we've reached out to the cultural center here in Tumwater, which is over by the town center, just across from the Walmart? Have they been part of that as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
We've been trying, we just haven't gotten a response yet. But yeah, that was one of the first ones that we were aware of.
Okay, I'll see if I can have them contact you as well.
I would appreciate it. Yeah, any way to make it easier just to talk. We're really that's kind of how we're framing all of these conversations, is we just would like the opportunity to talk with you. And then talk about your level of interest and involvement in whatever process we have. And more importantly, just to have them involved on the broader picture. That's the other reason, is framing this as sort of the ongoing conversation we're having, independent of whatever this project is, that we would like to always make a relationship with you about, and try to do it that way. So yes, we would really appreciate any help you may have. We also had a really good conversation with the Timberland librarians as just another avenue to reach people. Erica's gonna be having a table there, and also we're looking at other opportunities through food bank and other things for those kinds of things. So, those are the kinds of things that we're kind of exploring right now.
Couple of things that folks that I'm not sure if they're represented or not, but that would be, finance people, like either Washington State Employees Credit Union, or maybe some of the other credit unions or banks in areas, maybe ones that was.
Olympia Federal, that was definitely something, that came up when we were talking with the Chamber of Commerce about, because also in the back of our mind is when we were exploring ways to make it easier to do, accessory dwelling units, Lacey had, started some outreach and discussions with the local lenders about what it would take to design some loan process for those kinds of developments, because, you know, on the bigger level, on the national level, it's hard to have those conversations, but locally, what can we do and how can we help those things? So I think we definitely should have some conversations with them.
I guess I would also say, it would be good if you could somehow reach out to the military or the Veterans Administration, since, I mean, I think that is a kind of a component of folks moving to our area. I would say, it might be worth reaching out to a couple of major employers, you know, some of the bigger state agencies or something like that, to just say, hey, you got anybody we can talk to about, you know, where are your people gonna be, that kind of thing. And then it might be worthwhile to approach some of the, something like grocery stores, like the co-ops, smaller level greengrocers, the big ones, to say, you know, what are your plans in the future? What are you going to do? Are you open to helping with the housing scheme? You know, whatever. Kind of I don't know who exactly, but you know, they're in the business of helping feed people and would probably be interested to be around where people actually live. And there might be other kind of categories of business that would be useful in that way too.
Yeah, to keep that small town feel that we keep talking about, is to have, there's all the stakeholders, this is where we're going to develop, and.
Tumwater, for example, doesn't have one of the area food co-ops that I'm aware of. Maybe it does. I don't know. We've got a little farmer's market, but burgeoning as others. Just, you know, just making sure people have access to good food, not too far from home, is probably worthwhile.
Well, we've learned that the food bank has 4 or 5 satellites throughout the city, which I wasn't necessarily aware of. And we actually had an interesting conversation with one of the people running that about the community and social aspects about it. When during COVID, a lot of the, you know, for their senior population, a lot of the food delivery transitioned from coming to one place to delivery out.
Right.
And she made a very interesting point that the delivery out makes total sense for people it's hard to get out, hard to, you know,
Right.
all those. But also she knew that there were folks who would come to the food bank on a weekly basis and whatever, but that was their trip out. That was
Right.
their connection point.
Right. Yeah.
And so trying to figure out, you know, how to make those kind of connections as well, rather than also, you know.
I think the same somewhat be true also of people who may not be dependent on the food bank, but, you know, still need food, groceries,
Right.
Restaurants, what have you, one way or another. So, yeah.
I would like to say, part of our first outreach for the survey, we did hand out flyers to local businesses. I spoke with business owners, trying to get them involved with the open house that we had for the original update. And I had a lot of good conversations, and we had a pretty good turnout for this first open house. I went to local coffee shops, coffee stands. I feel like people are supportive of trying to help get the word out.
Yeah, and then they were enthusiastic versus, you know, like, why bother, which is like, okay, first hurdle.
Yeah.
That was an excellent thing, so we'd like to take advantage of that.
I applaud you for going to them.
Yeah.
And expecting them to come to you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's probably the biggest lesson for us from the survey is we've got to go out.
Yeah.
We've got to be active and try to figure out where to go out and be selective, focus,
Right.
and rather than just sit back and let it come to us.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing, but, you know, I think it's something we need to demonstrate.
Very much. Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
I think that the way things work in our 4 communities of the county and the 3 cities, that we don't want to just focus on Tumwater. Organizations like senior organizations that are in Olympia actually serve all 4 of the areas.
Mhm.
And those are the powerhouses that you want to get in on this group, not just because they're physically located in Olympia. You don't want to eliminate them.
No, and Terry, I don't disagree with you. I think the reason, my focus is I want to make sure that the voices that we're talking to reflect some of the voices in Tumwater, meaning that, you know, the experiences and so forth are of Tumwater residents. How we get at that, the organizations obviously, from a variety of reasons, you know, are regional in nature. But what I don't want is to, you know, there's not one voice, there's multiple voices, and I don't think we're hearing the Tumwater voices as clearly as some of the others.
Well, Meals on Wheels, for instance, all comes out of Olympia, but it services all 4 areas. So if you're going to talk to the people that are involved in the food bank, or talk to the people that are involved with Meals on Wheels, you have to go to Senior Services South Sound, into the Olympia and the Lacey community centers, and work with those organizations because they serve Tumwater today.
Yep, no, I totally agree with you on that.
Brad, how much effort does the city, kind of backing off a little bit, but, you know, maybe this is a question for the new economic development director. How much effort does the city go to try to find out or lure, I'll say, attract development, whether private or public sector?
Probably not very much.
Are we more of a passive stance of like, you know, somebody might be coming to us and, you know, we're just gonna wait and be dependent on them finding their land?
I think our model for how we've dealt with economic development has been much more on the react side of things than the go out and because that is a you know, that's a different kind of level of effort. It'll be an interesting conversation with our new person about the direction that they want to go in. I know Austin was starting to go in that way because that's his, you know, he wants to get out and do more, and that was a brand new position. So, yeah, that's
where I'm going with that, or the reason I'm asking, is to begin to present this face of Tumwater is we want to welcome you here. You know, we're trying to create a place with all of these features, housing for your employees, housing for your community, but, you know, on and on and on. So, you know, being that face.
Yeah, and that brings to mind, like you went to a symposium for planners, how to get that in front of different businesses or different types of businesses in a large kind of area. So your business, you go to a symposium, you go to some different place, and where are cities that are being developed? Are there those type of things out there, and how to get on that? I think it'd be a great thing to do, to say, hey, this is the great new place to go to, is Tumwater. This is the direction we're heading. Please help us get there.
Yeah.
So I think the last item we want to touch on tonight is a little bit about what we're doing in terms of the open house. And Erica, would you want to sort of explain what we're trying to do and what level of input and
Yeah, so we have a few ideas for the open house. I kind of wanted to use the tabling at the library, which is a week before the open house, as a way to promote it. Not necessarily use the tabling as a chance to gather data necessarily, but promote and inform. Hoping to reach some of the demographics that we didn't get at our last open house and through the survey. As far as open house, we definitely want to start with the background, why we're doing it, state requirements, and the needs. Also, a lot of feedback that we heard from stakeholders so far is kind of breaking down the stereotypes of affordable housing, and maybe using different terminology as working class housing. Because when we look at the AMI, the income levels and groups, 80% AMI is still like $85,000 a year salary, which is a working class salary. And that's what our code says affordable housing is for the taxes, multifamily tax exemption. So I feel like just really educating, because other responses we received through the survey, I feel like kind of explaining affordable housing. And then also talking, we're going to have our consultant who's helping us with the middle housing and our development code updates. They'll be there to help talk about the middle housing, which our joint tour was primarily based around with middle housing, not necessarily affordable housing. So they're going to help us with that aspect and have a table. And then I want to kind of ask for input on what is a small town feel and how can we maintain that character? Because yes, we got a lot of comments from the public. We want to maintain a small town feel, but what does that mean? What does that look like to them? Or do we want to maybe show them different models like what we saw on the housing tour, where it's not necessarily apartments on a larger scale, maybe have different kind of designs like what we saw on the tour. And then talking about the legislature, what they're requiring, and then what is Tumwater doing currently as far as what we're doing to address housing now. We can talk about our rental registration requirements. We can talk about our housing action plan, our collaboration with the Regional Housing Council, kind of inform them of what we're also doing. That's maybe not as noticeable within the community right now because it's more of on a regional scale. So those are some of my ideas. The housing element, there's a lot that we're gonna have to work on. If anyone else has any suggestions, I'm open to hear them. Still trying to figure out more specifics, but I think that's a good start.
Yeah, what we're really also trying to do is be much more, less, here's the information, much more, let's start talking and having conversations and actions. So as part of the middle housing, for example, the consultant has been using models of middle housing types and laying it out and showing what it actually looks like and having people play with it and things like that. So what we're also really trying to do is trying to think of other places, other ways to engage in conversation, engage in everybody, problem solving, rather than just us, sharing information and calling it good. So yeah, on the online component, so we're looking at a lot more interactive survey things, story mapping and all that kind of stuff. And then the in-person things would be, separate conversations around the room on various topics and things like that. We'll be in this room and in this room as well. So just to give you an idea of the space that we'll have.
Have you thought about doing something down at the craft district? About having a table down there to talk to people? You might get a different demographic than even talking to like family education sports fest just right across the street. I think would be a good group to at least infuse them with information they can share. Those are two groups that. We have a conversation next week with Together, which is the
one of our primary groups when we're working with the school district to get it, to work with families and identify issues and those kinds of things. So, yeah, today the Budget and Finance Committee had interviews for our federal community block grant applications. And so the organization you mentioned was here for one of their programs, but, you know, it's like we're going around the table and about 3 of them said, yeah, we'll talk, we're talking to you on Thursday. Well, we'll talk to you on Friday. So any more, definitely looking at those opportunities.
Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if like a way or like a preferred way if folks had questions prior to the open house that they could send. You know, I think if you're doing some type of table or kind of doing this outreach, it'd be great to say like, hey, here's an email address or a website to go to. So if you have specific questions, you know, if you send them in to us a couple days in advance, we can try and have some material or something prepared for them. Is there a way to do that now?
Yeah. So two things. Erica has probably the best answer, but we're also using the stakeholders as sort of the springboard for that kind of conversation. But Erica, go ahead with it.
Yeah, so I do have a plan with communications. There's going to be multiple posts, flyers, and I could definitely use that at the library when I'm doing the tabling. Is I could kind of promote, you know, like, hey, if you have questions within the next week or two, you can email us because we'll have our contact information. But yeah, we could definitely add that. Like, you know, we do share our comp plan email address frequently in all of our materials.
But also the QR code.
Yeah, and oh yeah, that's another great point. We did make a QR code that we're gonna start having on flyers and like promoting people so they can sign up. It won't necessarily email us, it's just to sign up for our email notifications, but our email is on that flyer with the QR code.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, as staff, we're always willing to answer questions, take questions, have conversations, and meet with people outside of these public meetings.
Are there any other points to bring up? Erica, anything else?
Oh, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys do think of an idea or something that would be fun and interactive with all the materials related to housing that we've shared with you, please email us. Please email me, help me. I'm more than happy to take suggestions.
Are there any local events that are happening between now and then that we table out as well? Because I was just thinking like down at Brewery Park, which I don't know of anything, but.
Yeah, I could see if Parks and Rec is doing anything that I could join on. I did get invited to a Juneteenth celebration at the RAC with different municipalities, and we will have a table there, but it's going to be after the open house in June. It's just all about timing, which has been kind of hard. And also, it's in order to promote something, I want to have something to show them or have them interact with. Right now, we're still working on that online open house component. But what I could do is table after our open house, because that's when the online portion starts. And I could have a link or a QR code made for the online open house and have people engage that way. Yeah. So I could go to businesses, could go to events.
And after, I mean, we've set this, 2-week open thing as sort of, that's just the starting thought. If it makes more sense to hold it open longer, because again, we're also still waiting for some land capacity analysis and a lot of other stuff to happen before we can really move forward. If it makes sense to leave it open longer so we can take advantage of that, going out and talking with folks, or tabling and various things. We've been looking at local events in Tumwater as well to do tabling.
Yeah, and I am creating a flyer right now, kind of like a trifold to hand out as well. So stuff is definitely in the works. I have my work cut out for me. Busy on the engagement side of the update. So yeah, that's a great idea. I think that would be fun to promote the open house portion. Granted, it's just me and Brad in the department, so we gotta kind of choose carefully.
Yeah. Other ideas?
Is there a way to put a presentation packet, something together to give to volunteer organizations that they could share to expand your reach from just the two of you? To some trusted sources, especially utilizing the chamber, since they do so many things, to have,
Yeah.
here's this mock-up for doing a table, here's all this information.
That's a great idea. So follow up with the stakeholders, see if they'd be willing to promote the open house.
Yeah, and then have a hotline number that you two could just answer.
Or-
A hotline.
Yeah. So basically, if somebody's out doing this volunteer,
telephone.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they get a question that they can't answer, oh, hold on, let me call and see, and it comes straight from that person, so they're not giving misinformation, or they can get a quick question, and here's the hours that could be open.
I think, kind of answering multiple, I think it would be cool once I have the flyer created, that's, actually gonna be sometime by the end of this week, a flyer for the open house. We could share that with stakeholders.
Yeah,
See
and
if they'd be
I think we've been developing enough stuff. I mean, I included the example of the presentation I gave at the chamber last Friday. We're starting to get that
Mhm.
level of, oh yeah, we can give you 15 things to include, and this tells the story. But I think we're definitely close to having some of that stuff ready too. So, yeah, I would like to, that's a good idea.
And then when we hire the other planner, we'll have them sit on the phones.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Somebody will have to issue the food truck coupons. Have to.
Yeah.
Great. Good ideas, some good work ahead. Want to cut anybody off? We're going? All right. Like our next meeting date's in May 14th. Brad, do you want to give us a little heads up on that one? Not yet.
I don't remember what we
Either, so.
I think we'll be starting our discussion of land use and setting up the conversation on the conservation element.
Okay.
Alex has done some good work on the policy side that I think we can start to think about. But I apologize, I haven't thought that far yet.
That's fine. We've got time. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Motions? Vice Chair Tobias.
I motion we adjourn.
All right.
Second that.
The second from Commissioner Staff. We moved and seconded to adjourn tonight. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of adjourning tonight, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great evening.
discussion.
Be safe getting home.
Thank
Have
you.
a terrific evening.